The first time I saw them walking across my lawn, I thought it was a mistake, a simple shortcut, no harm done. But when it kept happening day after day, week after week, I realized it wasn't just disrespect, it was entitlement. I'm Daniel Harper, 42 years old, a quiet homeowner who just wanted peace after years of city chaos. When my wife, Ma, and I bought our home in Lakewood Estates, we thought we'd found a slice of serenity, a small town community with big trees, friendly faces, and a calm little lake behind our house. But what we didn't realize was that beneath the polished lawns and perfect mailboxes lurked something far less peaceful of the home, and more specifically, its queen bee, Karen Whitmore. Karen was everything you'd imagine from the stereotypy overly tanned, permanently offended, and always clutching a clipboard like it was a royal scepter. She'd been the HOA president for nearly a decade and treated the neighborhood as if she owned every inch of it. Our trouble started on the third week after we moved in. I was sipping coffee by the window one Saturday morning when I noticed two women and a teenage boy walking right through our front yard, not along the sidewalk, through it. They stepped over my flower bed, crushed a few tulips, and kept walking toward the community park on the other side. Maybe they're lost, Emma said, trying to be kind. But when it happened again the next day, this time with a group of joggers, I realized it was intentional. Apparently, our yard had become the neighborhood shortcut, and leading that little parade of trespassers was none other than Karen herself. Clipboard in hand, I stepped outside. "Excuse me," I called. "Would you mind using the sidewalk? You're on private property." Karen stopped mid-stride and turned, that patronizing smirk curling across her face. "Oh, Daniel, sweetie, this has been a common path for years. The last owners never minded." "Well," I said evenly, "we do." She tilted her sunglasses down. "You know, in this community, we value cooperation. It's not a great first impression to start closing off common areas." "Common area?" I asked. "This is my lawn." Karen chuckled. "We'll see about that." And just like that, the war began. Over the next few weeks, the foot traffic doubled. People with strollers, joggers, even kids on bikes, all cutting through my property as if it were a public park. I put up a simple no trespassing sign. The next day, it vanished. I replaced it with an author, this one cemented into the ground. A week later, I found it lying face down, splattered with mud. When I confronted Karen at the next home meeting, she brushed me off like an annoying mosquito. "Oh, Daniel, you're really making this into a bigger deal than it needs to be," she said, feigning concern. "Technically, your lawn borders the greenbelt easement. That's practically communal." That was a lie. I checked the survey papers. The boundary line was clear as day. It was my property, fair and square. I tried reasoning. I tried politeness. I even offered to build a small walking path beside the yard at my own expense. But Karen refused, insisting that tradition trumped title deeds. That's when I decided that if reason wouldn't work, I'd have to get creative. One night, after Emma went to bed, I stayed up sketching a plan. The next morning, I called my friend Brian, a landscaper with a wicked sense of humor. When I told him my idea, he nearly choked on his coffee. "You serious?" he asked, laughing. "Dead serious." "Well, if Karen's been stomping all over your lawn, she's about to have the shock of her life." For the next 2 weekends, Brian and I worked quietly in the evenings, digging, measuring, installing. We added motion sensor sprinklers, a high-powered ONESA hidden just beneath the grass line, all linked to a solar-powered timer and a little surprise controller I could manage from my phone. By Monday morning, everything was ready. At 7:15 a.m., I watched from my window as Karen strutted across my yard again, latte in one hand, phone in the other, lecturing someone about neighborhood standards. The moment she stepped into the center of the lawn, I pressed the button. PSSSSHHHH. A jet of freezing water blasted upward, soaking her head to toe. She screamed, slipped, and nearly fell into the flower bed. The sprinklers danced around her in perfect coordination like a ballet of vengeance. The joggers behind her tried to retreat, but the sensors caught them too. Within seconds, half a dozen HOA loyalists were drenched and shrieking, scrambling for the sidewalk. From my porch, I couldn't help it. I laughed loudly. Karen, dripping wet and fuming, marched up to my door. "Daniel Harper, she sputtered. "This is vandalism. You'll be hearing from the HOA board." I smiled calmly. "It's called irrigation. Perfectly legal and installed on my property, you know, to keep my lawn green." She glared daggers at me but had no comeback. She stormed off, leaving soggy footprints all the way to her SUV. That evening, I got the HOA's official letter demanding I disable the sprinklers. I replied with copies of my property survey, a signed permit for water installation, and a short note, "Greater than since my lawn has been used so much, I figured it should at least stay hydrated. Thank you for your concern." The next week, the trespassing stopped completely. People finally started respecting the boundary. Even Karen began walking around the sidewalk as though every time she passed, she'd glare as if I'd personally declared war on her soul. But the story didn't end there. A few months later, I was working in the garage when I heard a knock. It was Karina, but this time, she wasn't holding her clipboard. She looked at her broken bar tired. "Daniel," she said quietly, "can I talk to you for a second?" I nodded, cautiously. You have broken bar." "Wanted to apologize," she said, her voice softer than I'd ever heard it. "You were right. The property lines were clear. I just a broken bar didn't like how things were changing around here. That caught me off guard." "Changing?" she sighed. "This neighborhood used to feel like family, but lately, everyone's been fighting, over fences, over paint colors, a broken bar over control. I guess I thought keeping things the same would keep people happy." I paused. "Maybe it's not about keeping things the same, Karen. Maybe it's about respecting each other's space, literally and otherwise." She gave a small, rueful smile. "You're probably right." From that day on, things changed. The HOA eased up on the rules. Karen eventually stepped down as president and focused on community gardening instead. And as for me, my lawn became famous around the neighborhood, and not because people cut across it anymore, but because it always looked perfectly green. Every time I watered it, I couldn't help but smile, thinking of the day the sprinklers taught a little lesson about boundaries, respect, and the power of standing your ground. In the end, it wasn't really about revenge. It was about dignity. Sometimes, peace doesn't come from avoiding conflict, it comes from confronting it with a little creativity, a broken bar and a few well-placed sprinklers.